But right now we want to turn to some other breaking news about the foreclosure mess. New York City's own pension funds are calling for 4 major banks in which they own shares to audit mortgage and foreclosure practices. John Liu is New York City Comptroller, and he joins us right now. John, great to have you here.
Good morning, Carol.
So tell me exactly what you want these banks to do.
Well, our pension funds here in New York City are calling upon the boards of directors at these 4 banks to set up processes internally by which they can ensure that the processes for mortgages and foreclosures are conducted in a way that's accountable to the boards. And we're calling upon the audit committees of these boards to put in place these practices. You feel, in terms of all the headlines that we've seen over the last month or so, in terms of the foreclosure crisis, that things have not been done the way they should be, that it's going to cause potentially some significant problems here? It already has. There are systemic risks that still exist, and notwithstanding the headlines or maybe the lack thereof nowadays, the fact of the matter is that we are at substantial risk. First of all, homeowners are on the hook. Mm-hmm. We've got an economy that would put a dent in every time there's a foreclosure. And as investors, we've got the New York City pension funds. We have about $1.75 billion at stake here. You have a lot of exposure. That's right. There's a lot of exposure. And now they're talking about the investors suing the banks for or forcing some of the banks to buy back some of the loans. So as investors, we're at stake. The New York City economy and probably other economies as well are hurting, and homeowners are hurting as well. You're giving, though, the banks, I think, about a year to look into this. If it's such a serious problem, why not make them do it sooner so that we can assess the situation more quickly? We certainly would like to have the banks act as quickly as possible. Given the way the proxies work, this is the cycle that we can do, the cycle that we can rely upon. If we could do it sooner, we certainly would. What do you think is going to happen? And I bring this up because obviously we have a D.C. panel looking into this, and I talked to the senator earlier. I mean, there's a worst case scenario. The best case scenario is that this whole situation is overblown and it plays out not too badly. Worst case scenario is that the banks potentially could write off a lot of bad loans. Maybe we need another bailout. Are you worried about that happening? I think everybody is worried about the prospects of that, from taxpayers to the banks themselves. The regulators are working on their end. We have 50 states' attorneys general working on this. Mm-hmm. We're calling through these shareholder resolutions on the banks themselves, not just the management, but the directors that are ultimately responsible for compliance. We need them to step up to the plate at this point, and that's what these resolutions call for. Feel like the directors have been negligent up to this point, considering where we are right now in this process? Obviously, something went terribly wrong these last couple of years. The problem probably has been brewing for longer than that. Going forward, we just want to make sure that these major banks, they hold about 56% of the mortgages out there. Right. These banks have to ensure that the processes internally are compliant with the rules and regulations, not only federal laws and regulations, but the rules that the banks have set up for themselves. And we can no longer rely just on management to ensure that the compliance is taking place. John, let's talk about the banks you're targeting. Bank of America, Wells Fargo, JPMorgan Chase, Citigroup. I mean, really reads like a who's who in terms of the financial community. Is there one bank in particular that you're especially nervous about? Well, we've got these 4 major banks that hold 56% of the mortgages out there. I just want to make sure that they're all doing the right thing. On behalf of the New York City pension funds, we have a huge stake in them, right. And we want to limit our exposure to losses, and at the same time, we want to do the right thing by homeowners. In terms of limiting your exposure, just got about 20 seconds left here. Have you thought about paring back even more potentially your exposure to these financial banks? Well, we want to manage our exposure by insisting on good corporate governance within these banks. All right. We're going to leave it on that note. John, thank you so much, and thank you for taking time to share that story with us.